like to call the meeting to order. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone, and welcome everyone who's watching from home. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee DeVore.
Present.
Trustee Gatt.
Present.
Trustee Kazam.
Present.
Trustee Goff.
Present.
Trustee Wigginton.
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Present.
All right, everyone's here, so good to see everyone. A couple of announcements. So literally, a few of us were just coming from the unveiling of a sculpture along the Rock Island Trail at the library grounds by legendary artist Preston Jackson. So please get down and see that. We're very fortunate to have that in our community. It's another piece that's added to the collection. I did want to mention too that, excuse me, I attended the first farmers market last Thursday. I know Trustee DeVore's sister, Sam, is very involved in that, along with Julie Bilfelt. I know there are others. But it's a terrific market, and I hope you all let your friends and neighbors know about it, and some terrific vendors. So I'm very happy about that. And Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to help me a little bit, because I know we've got a whole lot of summer nights that you probably know more about than I. So
Okay. Would you like me to read the list?
would you highlight?
Okay. The village is excited to announce that we will be hosting events most Fridays in Tower Park. We'll be having Friday Night in the Heights on the first Fridays of June, July, and August, and September as well. The Drum Circle will be the second Friday. The Peoria Heights Community Band will be playing on the 16th, which is Thursday. The River Valley Big Band is playing on the 17th of June and the 15th of July. We have potentially Tower Park Yoga on the third Fridays, I believe it is, which is an agenda item before the board tonight. And we also have movie nights on June 25th, and then also June 25th, it'll be in Encanto. For the full details of the events, we have the Summer Night Series poster, which will be on our website or available here at Village Hall.
Thank you. This is on the website, Madam Clerk?
If it's not quite up yet, it will be up shortly.
Thank you.
It is.
It is. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we would be at approval of the Departmental and Board of Trustees minutes from May 3rd and May 17th, 2022. I'd ask for, I'm sorry. Let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. Correspondence, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I have a few letters here. I will read them, and if the board would like to view them in detail, please let me know. I'll have those available after the meeting. The first one reads, Dear Mayor Phelan, on behalf of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Bradley University, I want to thank you for speaking to the OLLI members about art in the Heights. I really appreciate you taking your time to share your insight. Best wishes, Diane. We also have a letter from John Amdahl that is also thanking Mayor Phelan for taking time to chat with the participants. He said, your comments were helpful to explain the importance of arts and history to Peoria Heights. What a wonderful village. Thank you, John Amdahl. The final letter I have here was from Mr. Tom Horseman. He's writing to personally thank Mayor Phelan and Chief Sutton for their assistance with the water problem on Hines. If you recollect, when Scott Corsett, commander of American Legion Post 1111, and myself met with you and Dustin regarding our lease in Centennial Building, I requested your assistance in solving a water issue at Dennis and Pam Gatt's house, 1018 East Hine Avenue. It definitely took time for Public Works crew to find the leak. It was located in front of 1018 in the middle of the street. It was a small leak in a lead pipe that was replaced with copper. Dennis Gatt's sump pump finally shut off after running since February every 90 seconds. To say the least, they can now rest easy. Hearing the sump pump running for several months was very stressful. Certain Public Works crew members deserve special recognition. Chris Chandler, Jim Bartley, TJ Bischoff, and Curtis Spence all worked diligently over several days and corrected the problem. Again, as a neighbor to the Gatts and friends as well, I wanted to reiterate a special thank you. Sincerely, Thomas Horseman.
Is that everything?
That's everything, Mayor.
All right, then I would tag along to that last letter, and my thanks to the Public Works crew. I know that was a complicated leak to figure out, but thanks for working diligently to do so. All right, now we would be at approval of the Departmental and Board of Trustees minutes from May 3rd and May 17th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those sets of minutes. Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any questions, corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. We would be at comments from the audience. If there's anyone here tonight to address the board, please come forward to the podium, give your name and address, and try and keep your remarks under 5 minutes. Comments from the audience? Going once? Going twice? Comments are closed. We'd be at old business. Any old business to come before the board? Hearing none, let's get right into new business. The first is administration and finance. We have 3 items. The first is approval of ordinance 2022-1679, an ordinance amending Title 10 of the Village Code pertaining to uses authorized in the I-1 Industrial District non-conforming uses and other miscellaneous provisions. Trustee DeVore, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-1679.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Go ahead, please, Trustee DeVore.
So this is an ordinance adjusting some of what we would allow in Industrial District 1, as well as like what they can use, like they can request for special use permits for in that district. In the ordinance itself, everything that's changing is underlined, but Mark is here, so I thought that he would be able to help us if we had any more questions with clarifying this ordinance.
I'd be happy to answer questions. I can summarize just generally. This is something that we spent quite a bit of time talking about at the zoning board, which is the first step in the process of ever amending the zoning ordinance. We're phasing out the automotive uses in the I-1 district and specifically prohibiting certain types of automotive shops adjacent to residential areas. That's the big problem. And, you know, Chief has a long history, I think is fair to say, with this property. You know, the one property that we've received numerous complaints about. And it's just, the zoning board felt that it was appropriate to phase that use out. And so there's a lot of language. It takes quite a bit to adjust the zoning code. But the long and short of it is, if you're going to be operating an auto maintenance shop, salvage yard, those types of things, you're going to need a special use, and we're not going to allow it if it's adjacent to a residential area. It's just too intrusive on the life of the residents in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Council. Dustin, I'll let you chime in before we go to questions from the board.
Well, the property that Council's referring to, we've had numerous calls of service there, and I think that over the years, it's been a nuisance property for those residents. And I've been in numerous investigations with the state, with EPA on violations. So this is just one tool to give us some different options as a board to regulate that. And again, if there's calls of service of illegal activity, it gives the village some other options on revoking the special use permit. That did not exist prior to. So I think this is something that I've been looking at for years, as council knows. But this is a huge win for the village, and it gives us a little bit of flexibility on what can operate.
Which property is this?
It'd be the 100 block. I don't want to name them by name. No. That would be on Merritt, all the way at the end of Manita. Yeah.
So let me
this-
just say too, then I personally have spent a lot of time on this issue myself. I think the difficulties here go back at least 3 administrations that I know of, but we'll leave it at that. If anyone has any questions, go right ahead.
So does this, the changes in this ordinance, is this property grandfathered in, or?
That's a big part of the ordinance is addressing what we call a non-conforming use. When you change zoning, anything that was legal before the change is called a non-conforming use. You establish that use before the zoning law changed, so you have a period of time to come into compliance. And we've addressed that in painstaking detail, depending on the circumstances. And this applies across the village. This is not one property that's impacted. I mean, there's one in mind, but this has universal application across the village, and depending on the circumstances, the village can insist that compliance occur either within 2 years, or if there are actual other laws that are being violated, that compliance happen within 6 months.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Just one, so with the variance or the special use permit, is everything up for variance? I mean, you said, or I think what I understood about this is it cannot be this type of business would not be eligible next to a residential property. So on the.
Correct. That would not be something that the zoning board could grant a variance to allow.
Okay.
It's not there's no longer a permitted use. So it's not as though you have a setback rule that says you gotta be 5 feet off the property line, but the zoning board can say, yeah, in this circumstance, we'll allow 3 feet off the property line. This would not be something that would be subject to variation by the zoning board.
I think a little bit of history just about that area. Many, many years ago, probably way more than 40, that was somewhat of an industrial area. It was a home to a coal company, and a spur of the Rock Island Railroad actually went down along Toledo and into that parcel. As we know, the railroad and that spur has been gone for a long time, decades, and I think now is the perfect time to make this change. Anyone else? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee DeVore.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Next is approval of a request for the use of Tower Park for fourth Fridays in June through August 2022 for Tower Park Yoga. Trustee DeVore asks for motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the request for the use of Tower Park on the fourth Fridays, June through August for yoga.
And a second, please.
Second.
All right, welcome, Janie. If you'd come up, I'm going to let Sarah, Trustee DeVore, set this
Yep.
up.
So Janie has done yoga for us before, and we had an amazing turnout here at Tower Park when she did that. So she is back again to offer her services to the public. So she's requesting the use of Tower Park on the fourth Fridays, just June through August, which I think this is a wonderful thing to have for our community. It just gets people out, gets people moving, and she has a great philosophy on it, so.
Just to.
Janie, just so everybody can hear at home, and
the
we'll
mic.
record this,
Sorry,
if you'd
it's
use
a
the
thing.
mic, thank you.
Always a thing. Hi, guys. Happy to see so many familiar faces. Happy to be back. Yes, just to elaborate on that. In the past, we did it and we weren't sure what it was going to be like, and it ended up having like a far greater turnout than we had anticipated. And because of that, I really want to support our people and show up for them as well. And by that, I would like it to be more professional, because I'm a professional. This is also a reflection of my day job. And so the cost that I am requesting from the zoning board is truly just to pay my people and to make sure that we can make it sustainable. And my people is having the proper equipment so the 200 people at the park can hear me correctly, and to pay assistance to make sure everyone feels seen and welcome. And then there were a couple other things added, and I'm not sure if the budget was added in there, but it's open for anyone to see. And then anything else that to pay myself for the event would be sponsored by sponsorships and vendors. I would love to have local vendors. We'll see, because the time crunch is kind of there if we do it in June, July, August. I talked with Sarah about potentially pushing it back to July, August, September, just so we can make sure everything's pulled together. But I'm open to doing whatever. We can make anything work. Happy to do it all. But to have local vendors like Clink Bar and a non-alcoholic bar, of course, and some food and other just vendors there for people to shop around. The idea is, because it's a Friday, that they start there and then move on throughout Prospect down for the evening. I'm not sure what else to say. Just happy to be here. Hopefully, if you have any questions, please, I'm here to answer them all. Oh, and a band. That would also be paid for.
Questions?
Is this a free event? The yoga?
It's a free event to the public, which is why I'm requesting, yes, I want it to be free and accessible to everybody. And I also think that's why it did so well, is because it was a free event. Great question, important one.
Anyone else?
I just have one comment.
Yeah.
I'm in great favor of this, and I would encourage you to speak with Julie Biefeld or anyone who's involved in the Bridge to Bridge event happening in the fall,
Okay.
as possibly doing something like this over that weekend.
Yeah, I'll contact you and get her information. That would be lovely.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Trustee DeVore.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Next is approval of a request for a donation in
Thank you,
the
guys.
amount of $500 for Tower Park Yoga. Trustee DeVore asks for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the donation in the amount of $500 for Tower Park Yoga.
And a second, please.
Second?
All right. Anything you don't
No,
want?
just like Janie's asking, really, that she just would like a little bit of assistance to help to be able to provide this free event for our community, and I think that this amount is more than reasonable for what she's providing for our community.
And Sarah, Trustee DeVore, this is, we budget for little items like this, so this is completely budgeted for.
Yes.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Trustee DeVore.
Aye.
Trustee Gatt.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for being here to tell us about that, and appreciate what you're doing for the village. All right.
Yeah.
Trustee DeVore, anything else under Administration and Finance?
Not today, Mayor, no, thank you.
Mr. Administrator, anything? Nothing there, thank you. Okay, we'll get right into Economic Development and Community Development. We have 3 items here. The first is approval of ordinance 2022-1680, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a Business Development District Number 1 redevelopment agreement by and between the Village of Peoria Heights and James J. Cross, doing business as Leaves and Beans Cafe. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve this ordinance.
Second. All right. Trustee Kazam, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Wayne, but I'm going to just first say that I think Leaves and Beans, both the roastery and the cafe, are what make Peoria Heights special, and James, I want to thank you for the good 2 businesses you run here and all you do for the village, so tell us about it, Trustee Kazam.
Well, we've discussed this in previous meetings, and then we had a wonderful conversation with you in Mayor's office. This is a request for actually $5,100. They'll be spending more than that, of course. That's 75% of what their request is, to do a patio so they can accommodate more outdoor seating.
Wayne?
I have nothing additional to add, just appreciate it.
Just out of curiosity, how many seats do you think you'll be able to add?
James, yeah, please tell us about your project and what's going on with the business.
So first off, I want to say thank you so much for making this an option. I was very excited and surprised that you guys were offering this, so this is fantastic. This is something we wanted to do for a while, is just to extend our patio a little bit larger because we are in an old house and have only so much limited seating inside, so the patio is the only area we can really grow. So this is something we were already looking at. The fact that you guys were able to offer this type of thing to businesses let us actually repair half of our already established patio that had been broken. It was a massive tripping hazard. So I want to say thank you. That actually gave us the ability to look at that. So what we've done is we added 30 feet of more patio, 30 by 10, so we're able to hold about 16 to 20 more customers sitting in that new area, on top of repairing our old paver area with new poured concrete as well. So that we'll hopefully be able to increase more. Our weekends at that store have been tremendously successful, and that patio really helps us a lot in the summertime.
Questions? Comments?
Well, I for one, love the business.
Thank you.
It's a great, and I'm glad to see it's improving. I didn't think there was room for improvement. It's really a great place, so thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And customers should say not just customers, people walking by love to see reinvestments in the properties. Like, we get a booming business just when we get our fence repainted, so people would like to see us caring a lot more.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Trustee DeVore.
Aye.
Trustee Gatt.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, next is approval of ordinance 2022-1681, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a Business Development District Number 1 redevelopment agreement by and between the Village of Peoria Heights and Chad J. Zobrist and Generations Candle Company, LLC. Trustee Kazam?
I make a motion to approve this ordinance.
Second.
All right, go right ahead.
As the mayor said, this is an ordinance approving the request for $3,225, more or less, to replace their front door of their business.
Mr. Zobrist, welcome. Come on up here. We're proud to have you, your family business.
Thank you.
Come from Morton to here, so.
Yeah, so we're relatively new. We opened Generations back in August of 2021. So it was the old Smith Pharmacy. We gutted that and turned it into our candle shop. So if you haven't been in there, we're a pour your own candle store. And we hope this new door, we have a single door now off the curb. We're going to put a double door in with more glass, just for better curb appeal, but yet more glass for people to see into to what we're doing. So Yeah, we appreciate
You've got a terrific
it.
shop, but tell everyone about your concept and how it works, because I think it's really unique.
Yeah, well, thank you. So yeah, we create an experience. That's what we hope to do in the Heights. So you come in, we've got a scent wall, you go through and smell about 80 different candles, then you pick a vessel and what you want to pour into, sit down at our candle bar, and we work with you and we create your own custom candle. So we're trying to expand into doing more custom scents with businesses, events, and things like that, but we've been well received. We're very happy to be in Peoria Heights. We live in Morton. We could open one there, but we knew that this was going to be a better spot, a better fit for what we wanted with the restaurants and other shopping up here.
Questions?
I'd be curious, is that business, the candle making and such, is that kid-friendly or?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Geared to
We've
adults?
had lots of birthday parties, different things like that. So yes,
Sounds
kids
terrific.
really enjoy it.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gatt?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Goff?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Thanks for being here in the
Yeah,
Heights, and
appreciate
good luck with the
Thank you.
improvement.
All right.
Okay, we've got approval of ordinance 2022-1682, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a Peoria Heights Tax Increment Financing District Number 2 redevelopment agreement by and between the Village of Peoria Heights and Clark Management LLC and Marway Incorporated. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
All right, go right ahead, please.
Okay, so as the mayor just stated, this is a request for financing redevelopment agreement. Actually, we spoke about this quite some time ago as a board. This property is actually McDonald's, more familiar to all of us as a McDonald's property. They embarked on a rehabilitation of that property. It was parking lot and drive alley resurfacing, new roof. They replaced the shed roof. All kinds of things. And they just didn't submit their paperwork until now. So the work has been completed, and this is their submission of this request.
And I'd just add a word about the operator, Mr. Terry Clark. He's one of the larger McDonald's franchisees in the area, but I think we would both agree, runs good business there and is good to the village. All right, we're open for questions.
Trustee Kazam, this went through zoning, right? And
Yes.
didn't we put stipulations on how they did it because we were going to approve this?
Yes.
Like,
I feel
they
like
made changes to their design because we were like, we'll do the TIF agreement if you make these changes.
Yes.
We
Yes.
already did it, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was remembering that correctly.
And that's been a while. Thank you for mentioning that, Trustee DeVore.
Okay, I just was like, I'm pretty sure because we went through all that with them first.
Yeah, it's a little unusual that the request would come in so, much after the initial conversations, but the property looks amazing, and you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah, we
I'm sorry, so Trustee DeVore, the zoning board said that we would pay the TIF out of the TIF district?
No, so they went to zoning for their changes.
Okay.
Okay, and then it came to us, and we knew at that point they were gonna want a TIF agreement for the changes.
Okay.
So then we made changes to their design to be like,
not big changes.
yeah, no, we just asked for some small things, like if we're gonna do a TIF agreement with you, could you do this with landscape? I don't remember what
I
exactly
feel
what
like
they
it had
were.
something to do with fencing.
Oh, maybe it was the fencing.
It was the fencing and also the play area.
Yeah.
Because he was changing the indoor play area, so that's where the request came from. And the fencing, correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Anyone else?
I just have one addition, it's not really about this. I understand why they're going through TIF, and I understand why we are using our, our council who draws these things up. But on the BDD things, that's new, right? Because we weren't always getting a redevelopment agreement through the BDD using our council to draw these things up. We had a separate application that I'm guessing was probably more affordable than having them draw up.
It was a blanket program at that time in its inception where it would just be a facade grant. So we after speaking with Wayne and Steve Klein moving forward, we thought we would individualize that per I guess, company or agreement, so basically not a one-size-fits-all, and also a little bit broader. But I think what you're referring to, Trustee Wigington, is that was just a straight facade program, and once that expired, we looked to see what we could do to make it better for our businesses, and I think this is what we came up with.
Okay, so, but every time we do that, we have to
Yes.
pay for their services
Well,
each time?
Correct. Steve Klein, which we run that through him anyway, and also Wayne, who's on our.
So this doesn't come from Mr. Walton's office?
Right.
No, it goes through Steve.
Yeah.
Steve Klein, yeah,
Nick
sorry.
Nelson.
What's that?
Nick Nelson and
He's the attorney for Klein, Nick Nelson, in-house attorney for Steve Klein, so we go through them.
So
for
every
that.
time now, if we make a BDD expenditure, we're going to run legal costs?
Everything goes through Steve Klein when it
Even
comes to this
before?
topic.
For TIF?
TIF, yes.
But even for the BDD now, we're running everything through outside counsel?
Correct.
Well, that's their specialty. I don't know, counsel, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that they're exactly outside counsel because we pay them an annual fee, so we have a relationship with them, and in-house, they have an attorney, so
Correct. I'm not sure how they bill. Honestly, I've never been involved in their billing. Worked with them extensively, but I don't know what the billing rate is.
They do itemize as well. We know when Nick Nelson is working on anything, so, yeah, it's not just a blank invoice.
Well, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
But the previous thing that we had with the BDD, even that blanket statement, we initially still had to pay them for all the work to set that up, and every time we readopted it, we paid them money for that too.
Everything goes through Klein and
Yeah.
Associates. They've got to approve the eligible expenses before we move forward. That's why we have them.
Wayne, did we leave anything out?
Part of this is that it's a standard agreement. You won't see many changes in these agreements.
Okay.
Just, reflecting the applied amounts and things like that. So the other was more of an administrative process, maybe took more administrative time going the other direction. And we just felt, for as many as we have, it's good to see, board approval and of these documents and these agreements.
Thank you. And this is not relevant to, obviously, this thing. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk?
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Goff?
Aye.
Trustee Wigington?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
All right, that passes. Trustee Kazam, anything else?
No, that's everything, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aldridge, anything you want to report on economic development?
Well, later this evening, you'll get a report from Farnsworth Group if they show up on the.
I saw Paul Curry. Paul's walking around in the Tower Park.
So the other thing, a couple of things we're working on, but one thing you may be curious about is the Tower Park Accessible Playground, Together We Play. So we did receive 2 proposals for that. Selection committee has met, have not made decisions yet, but hopefully one of the next meetings, maybe the 21st, we'll have a decision on which firm to select for that project.
Wayne, do you have an estimate if everything went well and the bids were approved, when construction and completion might start on an aggressive schedule?
I would say by the end of the year. It's been very difficult, with the atmosphere, today, ordering materials and getting materials delivered. That's probably the biggest issue. These are all kind of custom materials, including the playground equipment and the surfacing. But I think both of the firms have indicated by the end of the year, if all goes well, say late fall kind of time frame.
Okay, anything else?
That's it for now. Thanks.
Okay, we would be at Public Works. Trustee Goff, you're going to lead us in a discussion on weight limit signs on Prospect Road and Glen Avenue.
Yeah, we had a request from a citizen who lives on the north end of Prospect for no trucks over 4-ton signs to be posted so that trucks of that weight don't travel northbound past Grandview Drive on Prospect, past Glen. They want to turn the traffic down Glen, all the trucks. And I guess we're opening for a discussion on what we think about doing that. A little background that I can give. Prospect formerly was State Route 88A. It was an alternate state route. It's asphalt over concrete. It was designed for truck traffic. to the best of my knowledge, I started working here in 1976, and there has never been no truck signs limiting truck traffic going out northbound on Prospect to this point. Other than that, I guess we open it up. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on it?
I have questions. So to clarify, we want to stop trucks going north on Prospect, so we would route them down Glen Avenue?
I believe that's the idea.
Well, let me, if I may interrupt.
Sure.
I don't know that we've had a citizen request that, so
Oh, okay.
I thought, let's bring it to the board for you all to hear this, but we're not yet, your administrator and I are suggesting this, and I have some questions too, but go right ahead, Ben.
Okay, I'm just thinking like, I don't want to reroute trucks down Glen where we have both of our schools and these kids walking home from school too, and the sidewalks aren't completed all the way to the school on the southbound side, right? So if we're going to do this and say no trucks can go northbound, I don't want to reroute them down Glen.
That was one of my comments.
That would be like my number one concern. How, do we know like what the level of trucks that are going that way are? Like, do we have any kind of knowledge on that?
I don't personally, at this point, have any knowledge of how many trucks go that way. What immediately came to my mind when I heard about this was, for instance, Sherman's. They probably have a few of their trucks that would be over the 4-ton limit that probably go that way. I don't think it's a huge amount of vehicles, but I don't have a number for it.
Here, I used to be a truck driver and stuff, and it seems to me that it was well known, you don't go on Prospect towards the junction. You gotta turn here on Glen, and when you're coming down Knoxville, if you turn on Prospect by the junction, you can't come all the way down Prospect unless you got a delivery on that part of the road. Now, I've always thought we had a limit of what could go up and down there, because I remember seeing, there's a sign, isn't there, saying no trucks allowed?
On the hill, there is.
Well, that doesn't work either, so.
But, I want to go back for a second, just briefly. Last year, we had the resident show up and complain about this same topic, and I've talked to him since recently, and I told him that I would bring this up for the board for discussion. So there's a few different problems, and Trustee DeVore brought one of my concerns up with routing it down Glen. And I'm not sure what the really option is. If there's any place on Prospect to slow things down, it's going over the speed humps. But I think the issue is, and I'm going off his own words when he was here, is he doesn't like the busy street. So I don't really have a solution other than keep it the way it is. I don't think it's that large of a volume that we need to change or redirect traffic. I really don't. But I told him I would bring this to the board for discussion.
I would just like to add that I live 2 blocks away from Sherman's, and so on both cross streets from my house, there are a lot of Sherman's vehicles, and I can't see how that many of them would be going north, because I feel like they are going south by my house. They are very respectful, and I also don't want to make things with gas the way that it is. I really would like to not see us make things harder for the Sherman's warehouse based on what they do for the community, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would think that Sherman's might be part of it, but I think it's a lot of delivery. I was trying to picture a 4-ton truck in my head, and I have a feeling it's probably more deliveries, like to restaurants, beer trucks, the country club.
Right? I'm sure that is. But if we didn't let them go down Glen and we didn't let them go down Prospect, then they have to go all the way down Moore Drive and then back up Prospect. So then you're just, taking it from one neighborhood and putting it in another, essentially.
That's the way I see it too, that, there's residences obviously on Prospect, residences also on Glen. We have, as you pointed out, 2 schools on Glen. And I did not mean to imply that Sherman's is the problem. It's just an example that
I didn't take it that you did,
I didn't want to single them out. But
I don't want to make them upset either.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, Trustee Goff, I'm glad you said that you don't ever remember a sign, because when the gentleman spoke last year, he definitely said there was a sign, and I couldn't ever remember a sign being there either. If anyone would know, it would be
I worked
you.
here since '76,
Right.
and I was in charge of signs for at
Right.
least 10 years.
Well-
There was no truck signs on Prospect.
Okay.
And I just want to make one more point, and it also, even if we did put signs up, it's going to come down to enforcement and where the police department prioritizes that. So I think that the amount of trucks that does stop, I think is going to be minimal anyway, to be honest with you, because we don't have the manpower, nor will I assign a guy at the corner watching for trucks. So I think that the sign, even if they did put them up, it's going to be minimal, really. That's my opinion.
And I think another big problem is, and we've talked about this before, is GPS. Like, a lot of these people don't know where they're going. They're following an app, which often takes them down roads that are completely not appropriate for large vehicles, but it just, that's what they have at their fingertips.
I want to tell you, we guys out, driving and everything, it was easier just to stay on War Memorial, go to Knoxville, if you had to go to Pioneer Park or anything. Do like the one guy who was arrested a few years back, drive around the heights, don't drive through the heights. It's now, way back when we had PAPS, you had lots of trucks coming up and down Prospect and stuff, so I don't see where you're going to have that many trucks. For one, if they're delivered, if they don't have to go through the heights and drive through our business district, because the guys are probably in a hurry and need to get the job done, and they don't want to have to slow down. I mean, you're already on War Memorial going 45. Why would you want to have to turn right and go up Prospect and, drop down to 35? And then you got to deal with, especially lunch crowds and everything else. So, I don't think we need to put a sign up. I mean, like I said, it was always understood, you don't stay on Prospect past Grandview, and you don't come down from Bonacas Junction. That was always the standard. We always, didn't do that. So.
And please let me know if you feel differently. Just contact me and we can bring this topic back up, but I think, unless anybody has a different opinion.
Well, I would like you to bring it back up, Trustee Goff. After you think about this, a couple of things that occur to me. And, we want to hear all voices, and one voice in that neighborhood expressed concern about speeding and about trucks especially. And we've made a stand that we want to do more for our neighborhoods, and certainly the North Prospect neighborhood is a beautiful neighborhood. Although you're correct, Trustee Gett, when Paps was here, I know lots of semis were running out there. And again, that being said, the last thing I want to do is divert traffic on Glen Avenue, where we have a library and a school, and it crosses the trail. Even though at one time that was a county highway, but that was before the school and the library were located there. So I'm not inclined just yet to erect these signs, and I would really want to know what it would do to Sherman's, who Trustee DeVore pointed out, employs about 100 people and is really good to our community. So there's lots of things here we have taken into consideration, but someone did ask us to look into this, and I think we've made our comments tonight, but I do think we should bring it back another time if you do so, Trustee Goff.
Okay.
Do you have anything else under Public Works?
The only things that I have are our new street sweeper is going to be delivered on Thursday, and we are in the middle of spray patching right now. And that's it.
If you would take, the Public Works Department has been busy on a lot of water main breaks, but would you explain what happened to the patch job we did on the Country Club line?
Yeah, I know that they patched it. It was a lot more complicated than they expected because it wound up being directly underneath a catch basin. That catch basin was removed. The repair was made. The repair lasted less than 4 days. And I would ask Superintendent Chandler if there's any other details that I'm missing that he may want to add.
No, that's pretty accurate. There's a big 16-inch gas main that runs right by there. They had to be right there on standby. Ameren engineers would not let them put the catch basin back where it was, so they had to redesign it and move it back like 5 feet. So that is unfortunately going to be an added expense we're going to have to pick up. But it is all back and repaired, but the water main has to remain off. Otherwise, we don't want to blow up Peoria's road again. So that engineering is beginning on that water main replacement, and obviously we're going to try and get it through there as fast as we can. It is a process, though.
So the gas line was an unforeseen problem, something we didn't know about when we had the
Well,
discussion at the...
we knew it was there, obviously, and that was one of the main reasons we needed, because it was over the side of the hill, so we wanted to hire a bigger contractor to take care of that, because of that was an issue. And no, we didn't foresee us having to relocate this catch basin.
Okay, anything else?
I think
All
that's
right.
it.
Thank you. Let's move on to public safety. We have one item and one update. The first item to approve is purchase of 2 police vehicles from Thomas Dodge Chrysler Jeep of Highland Incorporated in the amount of $59,450. Trustee Wigginton, I'd ask for a motion to approve this.
I move to purchase, for the approval of a purchase of 2 police vehicles from Thomas Dodge Chrysler Jeep of Highland in the amount of $59,450.
Second.
All right, go right ahead, please.
All right, so this is a budgeted item. This is our, pretty much, what we're just cycling old vehicles out. The 2 vehicles that will be replaced, one is a Charger and one is a Durango. They both have 6-figure odometers, so they are well past their life. They're the 2 oldest vehicles in the fleet. If you guys have looked at car prices these days, I think 2 cars for less than $60,000 is pretty reasonable. I couldn't believe the numbers, honestly. So this will be 2 Dodge Durangos that will be coming into the fleet. And again, completely budgeted for. This is an expense that we saw on the horizon.
Thank you, Trustee Wigginton. Yes, this is a state bid price on both vehicles. They are 2014 vehicles, both of them well over 100,000 miles, and we did get $9,500 in on trade for both of them. So,
Any questions? Madam Clerk.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Goff?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, next we have a fire department update. I'll go to you first, Des, and then back to Trustee Wigginton.
well, I'd like Trustee Wigginton, if you'd like to start
Sorry,
this,
I'm sorry.
and then I will.
Okay, that's fine. So just a quick update, I guess. One of the people that we've come to see here at the fire department for, I think, 30 years, is that right, Chief? Oh, okay. Well, better part of 3 decades, has decided to retire, and that is Chief Wu. Chief Mike Wu will be retiring. I know we're going to do a little something for the chief as a parting for him, and really thank him for all of his years of service to the department. I know he will be missed by a lot of us here, and sad to see him go. But what that does is kind of opens up our fix for the fire department that occurred a couple of years ago. I think under the solution that this board had passed, they had someone for daytime coverage and with a stipend paid to him, and now that person will no longer be on the days. So it does change the situation with the fire department. Basically, we need to find a new solution to this issue, and we need to do it relatively soon. I think that I know that many of the members on this board were here when they went. I wasn't one of them, but I know that you guys have been through this before. I think really what we need to have is a kind of a brainstorming rehash maybe of what we had done previously, and pretty free-floating ideas offered, where no idea is really, we don't want to paint anyone who offers an idea or a solution as, villainize that person. I think everyone up here is looking for a good solution to this problem. And I would hope that we can arrive at a solution that, really does provide effective, and continues to provide effective fire protection to the citizens of Peoria Heights.
Thank you, Trustee Wigington. I think everybody on this board knows what we discussed and went through a year and a half ago prior to hiring Chief Thompson. I want to tell you, the fire department now, the way it stands, the way it's operating, the culture, he has done an outstanding job. He has done everything that I've asked him to do. He's not disappointed me one bit. I think the problem, what we're faced with now, is what every fire department in the nation's facing, and that's volunteerism. We adopted this hybrid model where it would be semi-paid, and it's worked for a year and a half. Unfortunately, with the retirement of Mike Wu, it presents that problem again. I know that I've had numerous discussions with Chief Thompson on how this new model might look if it's an option. Obviously, it's more money. We all know what the options are. It was only a year and a half ago we were all sitting here talking about this. And I am looking into those options just so the board has all the information and all the numbers. But I will say that I know Chief Thompson, I'll let him say a few things here. I know that he has some short-term and some long-term options. I do know that we have a little bit of time to make this decision and continue discussions, because he has been covering will be covering for the next couple weeks to make sure that we have enough time and have first shift coverage. At least we have one firefighter going to the call. So, and I'm sure I'll answer any questions that you might have, as I've been working with Chief Thompson and the other entities through this. Chief Thompson?
Yeah, so basically what I did is I'm covering the next 2 weeks, and then I have a firefighter who is willing to, he works nights, actually for me at Caterpillar, and he's going to cover during the day for up until the first part of August to make sure the day shifts stay covered. Currently, my recommendation is to bring on a person full-time. We have a member that is willing to do that for a price, a salary, and benefits, and a retirement if possible, and some vacation time. I think this person is a viable option. He's 30 years old. He's been with the department about 7 years. He does just live right outside of the village. He's on Lake Street, just off of Lake where he lives now currently. He's by far the best firefighter that we have here. He is a very talented individual. I don't know much more I could say about it.
I'll go first. Trustee Wigington, I don't know, the solution seems a little more simpler this time. Last time when we went over this topic, I think as a board we decided that we were going to provide day coverage, whether that was hiring a full-time chief, which is what we initially set out to do, and then when we had our selection for chiefs, the price of a chief was a bit more than I believe we expected. And then the alternative of having Deputy Chief Wu cover the daytime shift seemed like a viable option at the time, but I don't think anyone on this board thought it was going to be a permanent solution. So just because Wu has retired, I don't see how that changes our commitment to provide either a paid chief for the daytime or a duty crew, which a majority of the departments around us have already moved to. That, to me, is the only palatable option we have. Obviously, we can't afford a full-time fire department, and I don't think anyone wants to go that route. But for public safety reasons, we need someone here during the day. As far as I'm aware, or as far as I can tell, we don't have any issues on the evenings or weekends. And Mayor, just to point out, I'm sure we all know this, but our volunteers are all working in middle-class citizens in the village of Peoria Heights. And Mayor, it is tough out there. Fuel prices at levels never seen before, electricity prices doubling. and in some cases tripling. My fellow citizens that are drawn to serve in our community's fire department also have to work to put food on the table. They aren't here during the day due to a lack of dedication, but rather the necessity of work to feed their children and keep the lights on their homes. So I would like to see us move more quickly to fill the daytime position that we know by August we're going to have the issue again. We have a gentleman in the fire department who's extremely familiar with the community, is already trained, and could move into the position with little to no pain. I don't see why we would delay that.
I agree with Trustee Weisenberg that Chief Thompson's already got somebody who's been trained, he's familiar with the area. I'd say let's get it going and move on down the road. Like Trustee Weisenberg said, we knew that wasn't going to be a permanent solution. I mean, Chief Wu he's older than I am, and I retired from my job a couple of years ago, so we knew this was going to happen. So we need to, I think, hire this guy as a full-time chief and then start figuring out how we're going to get a duty crew for during the day, first shift.
So I have a question. Explain duty crew, the amount of people and the cost.
Did you have an estimate on what it would cost to?
Well, I'm asking the trustees who brought it up. I'm asking you two.
Okay, so I assume $70,000 a year for a gentleman here during the day. We pay Chief Wu $10,000, so that leaves roughly $60,000. So we would need to budget to, obviously in the next fiscal year, we would need to budget to cover that. I don't think we need 2 duty crews.
Two positions?
I don't think we need 2 positions currently. We're obviously operating with 1 with Deputy Chief Wu, and it was sufficient. As far as I can tell, we haven't missed any calls since March of '21.
That's correct.
Our volunteers are covering adequately in the evenings and weekends, so our immediate concern is the single firefighter here during the day. And I believe $60,000, if that's what it costs to ensure public safety, I think it's a small price to pay.
I think the number is much greater than that, but tell me, can one firefighter put out a fire?
One firefighter cannot put out a fire, but I will let Chief Thompson.
Effectively, no, absolutely not, no. No, but what can happen is we belong to an organization called Mavis. So if there is a fire, we're going to immediately call for a Mavis box. So that brings Peoria, Dunlap, Chillicothe, Limestone, and West Peoria to help us out.
All those other departments are using the Mavis box as well, correct? I mean,
Correct.
Peoria obviously probably does not, but Chillicothe, Dunlap.
Peoria does. We have actually stood by at our station
Okay.
when they have had multiple calls going on. They have called and asked us to stand by.
So what is the process of negotiations with the Mavis system? Like, is there ever a time where like the contract with that comes up? Like, it's just locked in?
It is. We pay a dues every year to that organization and to be a member.
Okay.
And once you're a member, you can call on it anytime you choose.
Okay.
Now, as a department that's within it, they can always refuse because they don't have the manpower, but that very rarely happens.
Right,
Very
so for
rarely.
example, if we had a fire, Peoria has 3 fires going on, they refuse service.
Correct.
But then the other departments would come in.
Correct.
Okay.
The other
And
thing,
in your experience, how often has someone refused service?
maybe a couple of times, and that's only one department that I know of that's happened to.
Okay. I have other questions. I don't know if
So-
I didn't mean to interrupt anybody, but I have other questions.
Go ahead.
Can anyone tell me what our current fire department budget is roughly?
I think it's rate 364, I think.
Okay. And what are we assuming this new hire cost? If we brought in one person as duty crew, on the high end, what are we assuming this is gonna cost?
On the low end, when you add in payroll taxes, pension, health insurance, workman's comp, unemployment, sick leave, you're at $116,896. And
116, I'm sorry, 116.
116,896, and 30,000 of that is pension, and I know that was up in the air as far as if that would be included or not, but that's a big addition to this. And then we don't even, I know that, I didn't talk to you about this earlier about the pension system, but there are some changes there that I did find out, but that number is pretty large. But I know that that's not a deal breaker if we can negotiate that if we get to that point, so.
Okay, for this new hire that you were interested in and feeling you're promoted, can you tell me what level he's certified at and on the medical side?
He's a first responder, just the same as the department. That's all we can respond as. The department's only first responder level.
Okay. How many fire calls have we had in 2022?
Fire calls? You mean structure fires you're
Yeah,
talking?
structure, like where we needed an actual firefighter, not medical calls.
Structure fires, there's only been 2 that I know of.
Okay. Do you know how many we had in 2021?
I think there were 3. Because there's only been 5 that I've attended since I've been on the department.
Okay. When we breached this conversation prior, there was a lot of talk about if we brought on a duty crew that was a full-time paid person, that would affect some of the issues with people responding to a call because day shift is getting paid and night shift is not getting paid, or weekends are not getting paid. So can you speak to me about how you feel that would roll out?
I think this individual is kind of the informal leader of the fire department, so he's very well ingrained with the other members. They really like the guy. He's very popular within the fire department. I don't see that being a problem at all.
Okay. Okay, I'm good for now.
The other thing, I just want to let you guys, I'm willing to give up the money that you guys pay me to go towards this, if that needs to be done. I have, and I'll still continue to do the job as you're asking. That makes absolutely no difference to me if I get paid or not, just to let you know.
I think everybody up here appreciates that, Chief, but I think we'd also feel more comfortable if we weren't going back to a volunteer fire chief, that if that stipend could at least be something. But I think that, I mean, it just goes to show you how supportive you are of the department, and I do appreciate that.
If I could just follow up to something you said, Mr. Mayor. Even at $116,000, I still think that's a small price to pay, at least initially, for a solution that we've been using for the last year and a half that has been fairly effective.
I agree.
I would love to entertain options. I don't think the 2-man duty crew is something we should jump to immediately, especially with us being able to utilize the MABUS as other communities do. Maybe as some of the gas stations get online and further developments, we have a bit more revenue. Not to say that we're in a financial issue, but I think as a good first step, meeting our commitment that we made last year to having a daytime guy, and then planning for that second guy at some point in the future, I think it's prudent. But besides spending the $116,000 for a daytime guy, I don't know what other viable option there is, because we have a hard time. Our volunteers are working. They've got to work to feed their families, and if they could be here, they would, without a doubt.
Well, I agree, 116 or 160, whatever that, 16, that's an affordable number. But I think we owe it to the citizens, to be honest with them, that one firefighter is not going to put out a fire. And this is public safety. I think that's the one thing we need to take very seriously. And so, Chief, did we pull the MABUS box? You mentioned 2 fire this year, 3 the last. Did we pull the MABUS box in those fires? Who put out those fires?
Well, we did.
In the daytime?
All but one.
In the daytime?
All but one. The one in the daytime, obviously, we did not.
But we had 8 every time.
Correct. I want to tell you this is another thing, and Chief Sutton knows this. I also enacted it May 1, so any high life hazard building within the village also now has automatic aid. So when a call would come in for a church or a school, automatic aid is already coming towards us at that point. So Dunlap and West Peoria are automatically dispatched with us. down below the hill, it is Dunlap is coming with us down below the hill.
I interrupted you, Trustee Weisenberg. Go back.
And I just want to point one thing out. I had that discussion with the fire chief as well. Even departments that have a two-man duty crew automatically activate the MABUS on a structure fire. So our use of the MABUS to assist us with fire isn't anything that's unprecedented or unusual. So I don't think there's ever going to be one guy putting out a fire. I mean, they arrive pretty quickly.
It's not unusual, but I think what the mayor was referring to, and I heard the same thing, and the criticism was more of the timely manner when it was done. Not the if it was done, it was when it was done. And I think that's an internal issue that we're working through, right? So I think that's what the mayor is referring to, because I heard the same comments and received all the same calls and actually was on scene, that, that has to be in a timely manner, because we're talking about public safety. And when you're asking for help, you have to put down boundaries, and I don't care who it is, as long as you can get there and save a life or somebody's property, and that's just how I'm wired, whether it's police or fire or public works or anything. So I think that's kind of what the mayor was referring to, is that has to be done in a timely manner, and I think we've discussed that.
Certainly. And the other thing, with that automatic aid, I mean, they're already rolling our direction when we're getting dispatched at the same time. So they're already coming. The reason why we didn't do that with Peoria, obviously, since they're closer, they don't like to do that with the volunteer departments because they may not be needed.
I had a question, just I guess my own edification. In the event then, I want to make sure I understand what's happening. In the event of a house fire in Peoria Heights during the day, is MABUS automatically pulled when that's phoned in?
Not for a house fire. They would only be for a high hazard, like the apartment buildings, the nursing homes, churches, schools.
So in the case of a house fire, our one firefighter would go.
Correct.
Assess the situation.
And potentially not even have to get there, because as what we talked with the chief, if the police arrive and they report a fire, smoke coming from the building, we're going to pull the MABUS box at that point.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
So Chief, I'm hearing that, but so how would that situation be different if we had, 2, 3 officers or firefighters here? If we had our own full duty crew, would they go and just put out the fire?
They could actually start the firefighting there, if they had somebody outside that was able to be there to help rescue them.
That takes 3 people?
It actually takes 4.
4?
You have to, it's according to the OSHA, 2 in and 2 out. You have to have 2 guys that go in, you have to have 2 guys outside to rescue.
Got it.
But they would pull the MABUS, just as other departments around us do as well.
Correct.
So even if we did have...
We're always going to pull a MABUS box. That's just something that you do automatically now anymore. If you don't need them, you can always turn them around. You can always say, I don't need them.
The only difference then, from what I'm understanding, is the 4 in this situation would literally start fighting the fire right then.
Correct.
Versus waiting for a neighboring community.
Correct.
Okay.
How much time do you lose in that?
What's that?
How much time expires in that time frame?
And what, Mayor?
Having one firefighter go and assess the situation to pull the MABUS box versus having...
Drive time from the station, from to where it is.
But then you're pulling the MABUS box, and how much time expires there?
That's up to the other departments. That's hard to say. Peoria is very close. Engine 10, engine 12, engine 16. They're fairly close here, depending on where it is in the village. And there's an engine from Peoria on every one of our MABUS boxes. Every time you pull it, there's a Peoria engine coming.
And as I understand it, Peoria is at the top of our MABUS.
They're the first engine.
Right.
Correct.
Anyone else?
The other thing I will say is on Peoria's side, it used to be you had to wait until they notified their duty chief before they would send anybody. That has stopped now, so as soon as you pull the MABUS box, they're sending the engine now.
Well, I think that this was a discussion, and I think we've heard a lot of good things and a lot of good questions from the trustees, and I think I personally want to thank you, Chief, for moving sounds like heaven and earth to get this coverage right now while we go through whatever transition we're going through. So tip of the hat to you. Thank you for that. And I know the people of Peoria Heights, thank you for that. And hopefully we can get a timely solution on this.
Well, we have a little bit of time, but I consider this, and I apologize for interrupting a few of you. I'll try to save my remarks to the end, but this is a very serious situation, and I thank you for having a solution to bring to us, but if the board decides on that option, in my opinion, there has to be a process and there has to be a hiring process. We may very well, if we go down that road, we may very well end up hiring the person you're recommending, but we're a public body, and I think that we have to, if we decide to, advertise for this position and go through a process of hiring. So the number you're using, it's a pretty well-paid job, and it deserves to be, but so again, we're looking at a lot of cost. And then another question that I would have, so we're losing a person who was a longtime citizen of a family given very much to the community, who didn't take any time off, who was retired. So now we're going to be hiring someone, so I assume for at least 2 or 3 weeks of the year, they're going to have sick days, they're going to have vacation days, and then we need to prepare for that. So it's just, in my opinion, it's just not a real simple solution, as easy as it sounds. So that coverage all needs to be taken care of as well. So there's still a lot of things in my mind to work through, and I'm going to ask the administrator to do that, but I appreciate all of your thoughtful dialogue tonight, and it's quite possible, if you all want, we have a Saturday session to spend some time going through all of this, but for now, Chief, thanks for at least covering the days.
No problem, thank you.
All right. Anything else under public safety, Trustee Wigginton?
That is it. Thank you.
Chief or Chief? All right. So finally, we have a presentation by the Farnsworth Group. Wayne, I'm going to ask you to set this up. Welcome, team from Farnsworth.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Caitlin Crank, Jeff Martin, and Paul Corey with the Farnsworth Group, here to present basically the reports on the Prospect Streetscape Visioning Plan, as well as Monroe Avenue Visioning Plan. So we can get this up and running, but a few things I'd like to just kind of begin the discussion, or just comments. These are visioning plans on Prospect Road. There was a stakeholder group assembled. So it's really the beginning of the public process on the street to gather these folks together and establish what could be a vision for the streetscape. So I would say no decisions have been made officially. This is a good guide as we proceed with the designs for the streetscape in both cases. This is also a very good and important first step as we apply for grants. It really is something that says we've done some homework on this project and here's what we would like to see. And there's several great exhibits been prepared that we always use for our grant applications, so I think that's important. But again, this is just the first step. As we proceed with both of these projects, there will be other discussions with the public, other decisions to be made, but again, a very important first step.
Folks in the audience, I know Dr. Adams, you're back there in the corner. Pull your chairs right up where you can see. Feel free to, want everyone to be able to see. Chris, is the camera picking this up, or how do?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I can edit it in later.
Okay, all right, thank you. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having us. Is this, yep, this is on. Well, we're going to start off with, we've got 2 vision books we want to walk you through, and we want to actually walk you through the deliverable that's been emailed to you. We think it's a great tool, so we're not going to go through everything in it, but there's a lot there, and it's great for further discussion amongst yourselves, amongst, citizens in the community. If these projects will get legs, if we're seeking funding, grant assistance, we like to produce the vision book. The first one is Monroe Avenue. It doesn't have quite as much meat on the bones as what we're going to show you for Prospect, but I think it's an important first step, so we thought we'd start with that one. And a little bit of the, kind of the reason behind why, Monroe Avenue, back in 2019, 2020, and it was adopted in 2021, Farnsworth Group worked with Halsell Levine on the citywide, or the village-wide comprehensive plan. And we helped them with the transportation component in that plan. And a couple of the things that the plan recommended were looking at connections, better connections on Monroe Avenue for both pedestrians and bicycles. If you look at where Monroe is situated in the village, there's a lot of rooftops in that area. And if you try to get over to Prospect, that kind of south leg of Prospect is not the most pedestrian-friendly environment. So the opportunity exists to maybe enhance Monroe Avenue to make that a pedestrian connection all the way from War Memorial, all the way up to Toledo Avenue. The comprehensive plan also talked about maybe a future sidewalk on Toledo Avenue that would connect over to the school campus, but also connect over to the Rock Island Greenway. We refer to it as the RIG in our document. We'd like to see that, gain some momentum just from a branding standpoint, but also connect people over to downtown. There's an existing conditions section. Most of you have been up and down Monroe. I drove it again tonight on my way here just to kind of look and see, hey, what's it look like at 6 o'clock at night? Excuse me. The bottom photo on the left, that's kind of a typical snapshot of what you see on Monroe. It's a 60-foot wide public right-of-way. There's a 4-foot sidewalk on the west side, utility lines on the west side, parallel parking on each side of the road, and with a travel lane in each direction. Power lines again on the west side. Some of those power lines you can see happen right in the middle of the sidewalk. So it makes it a little bit tough, and it's a narrow 4-foot wide sidewalk. If I'm a family with a kid and a stroller, there's some obstacles to get around. The top photo, that's looking north. That shows you the east side, and generally on that east side, there's some grade issues there. So if we do make improvements to that side, we have to think about, we've got grades, do we need to have retaining walls? So there's some issues with that. The other component is not to leave out, the mass transit component. There is a nice bus stop that CityLink has right at Lake, right at St. Thomas. But there's also some other ones scattered along the corridor. And this photo shows it. I forget the cross street right there, but you can see there's no bench, there's no paved area. So there might be some future discussion that needs to happen with CityLink to either consolidate the number of bus stops or maybe enhance them a little bit.
There's our no truck sign.
So this graphic, before we get into some of the options, and it's a little bit hard to read on the screen here, but this kind of shows the big vision. What is it we're trying to accomplish? The red line, that's Monroe. The yellow line that you see, we refer to that as the walk shed. That's a distance that someone would be comfortable walking to, to get over to Monroe to walk either north or south. There's a lot of rooftops within that yellow line. So that's why we think this is an important corridor to potentially, improve for bikes, pedestrians, and even for bus traffic. Again, connections over to the public school campus are important, to downtown, which we're going to hear about in the other presentation, and Prospect. We have 2 schools on the corridor, and we don't want to forget also along War Memorial that there's always been historically a lot of retail down there. Some of that is changing, but we think that's always going to be a solid retail area with the traffic counts down there. So it might make sense to have a better and safer pedestrian connection down to War Memorial. So in essence, this is really connecting a lot of people that live in the village, both north and south, to a lot of key areas in the village. So the next section, if you've looked at it, we kind of go through some options of what we can do. This graphic right here shows the existing conditions. And I'm not going to get in, I don't think I'll get into each one, I have 10 feet, 9 feet, 6 feet. I'll lose you. I just want to talk big picture here. In essence, we have between the red lines 60 feet of right-of-way, and we have about 36 feet of pavement to work with. Again, this is looking north. We've got the power lines on the west side, And again, where the lady is walking in the green dress with the walker, that's that little narrow 4-foot sidewalk that's right up against the curb. It does get a little bit wider near St. Thomas and a few other areas, but generally speaking, it's about a 4-foot wide sidewalk. Again, parking on each side with a travel lane in each direction. So the first alternative we looked at right here was, let's not move the curbs, let's not do anything with that 4-foot sidewalk, but how can we get bicycles and dedicated bicycle lanes on Monroe? So to do that, we've eliminated the on-street parking on the west side. We've kept it on the east side. But you can see on the west side, I've got a slightly narrower, it's a 4-foot wide bicycle lane right against the curb, which is right next to the sidewalk. On the northbound bicycle lane, that would be a 5-foot lane. And we'd still have on-street parking. And again, we're not changing curbs, we're not moving the sidewalk, and we have dedicated bicycle lanes in each direction. So this is kind of a low impact solution. Ideally, that 4-foot wide bicycle lane wants to be 5-foot wide, but again, we're next to the curb, so maybe we could make it work. We've even kind of shrunk down a little bit the on-street parking width. When I was driving up tonight, and I'm not advocating necessarily one way or another, I didn't see a ton of cars parked on the street. And the ones that I did see, I was thinking, could they all locate to one side? To me, it seemed tonight, and maybe this is just anecdotal, it seemed like you could easily, potentially lose parking on one side and not have parking issues along the corridor. The next option we looked at, again, this one doesn't move curb lines. I'm keeping the curb lines right where they're at. But here you can see that sidewalk, I've moved to the other side of the power pole. And I've actually widened it. It's a 5-foot wide sidewalk. We still, on this one, we keep on-street parking on both sides. We don't have bicycle lanes, but here we would do what's called a sharrow, and I've got a graphic later that shows what that is. Basically, a sharrow is where cars and bicycles share the same, 10 or 12 feet. There's pavement markings and there's signage along the road so people know, hey, look out for bicycles. Cars, you're sharing the lane with a bicycle. This is nice. It gets the sidewalk away from the curb edge, and we have an opportunity to make the sidewalk a little bit wider. And again, this one we're not, moving curb lines. One thing you'll notice if you go up and down the corridor, it does appear that the right-of-way, you've got 60 feet. There's a lot of retaining walls and what I would call, what appears to be private property within the right-of-way. So that's maybe we've listed advantages and disadvantages. That might be a disadvantage where people feel like, hey, you're going to put a sidewalk on my property. Well, technically we wouldn't be, but we might have to take out a planting bed or a retaining wall and move it back and have the appearance that we might be encroaching on private property. So I did want to point that out because it does, in certain areas, it gets very tight. But again, this was a low impact one. We're not moving the curb. It's just shifting the sidewalk. So these next two, we started to look at what if we did move the curb. On this one, we're moving the west curb line. So I'm getting rid of the on-street parking on the west side. By doing that, I can get a little bit of a wider sidewalk on the west side. I can get a little bit of a green buffer space between the sidewalk. Now we still have sharrows, we don't have bicycle lanes on the road, and just on-street parking on the east side. Some advantages of this, again, I get that wider sidewalk, I get a little bit of buffer with the sidewalk. Some of the disadvantages, that we're moving the west curb line, that's the biggest disadvantage. There's a cost with that. So there'd be some utility coordination that would have to happen. So those, to me, are the biggest disadvantages. So that's moving the west curb line. And then we looked at, well, what if we went to the other side and moved the east curb line? So kind of working west to east, I'm keeping everything the same as is today on the west side, the 4-foot sidewalk right against the road. On-street parking would just be on the west side, 2 sharrows, one north, one south. But then that allows us to incorporate maybe a planting strip that could maybe have street trees and a sidewalk also on the east side. Again, the disadvantages with this, moving the curb line is expensive, and to me, there's a lot of grade issues on that east side that I would think would make this a bit of a challenge. So those are the different scenarios we've gone through, and again, part of the reason for this document is to kind of get the conversation going. And maybe the decision is, we don't need to do anything to Monroe, it's fine as is. But if people are starting to say, hey, how do we make it safer? How do we better connect to a growing downtown? There's some options in here. There's a toolkit that you have now. This was Paul's idea. It was a great idea. He's like, stack them all on top of each other. That way it's easy for you to kind of compare them to each other. So credit to Paul for that little graphic insight. Some of the corridor amenities, if this thing would get traction, there's a couple things I want to point out. I thought this was a great example. We talked about a lot of things tonight with grass and buffer between a sidewalk. This is on Glen, just down the street. I think this shows a great example of what it looks like where you've got the sidewalk moved away from the road, which on a residential street like Monroe, to me, it wants to be away from the road. When we talk about Prospect, there we want, sidewalk and pavement and cafe tables right up against the road. On a residential street, not so much. But then you can see on the other side of the street where you've got a sidewalk. I think what makes that work is I'm sure that's not 4 feet wide like what we have down on Monroe. If this plan would get legs, again, we'd eventually want to start to look at, is there some pedestrian lighting that would happen up and down the corridor? That would help calm traffic. That would make it more pedestrian friendly. Not necessarily saying it has to be the lighting that we're using in downtown, but there's different types of styles of lighting and pedestrian level that can make it, again, a more inviting and pedestrian friendly environment. Corridor amenities, we talked about those bus stops. This is simple. It's just concrete and a bench, but sometimes that can make a world of difference. This is a good example we showed on the section. This is a bicycle lane that's 5 foot wide. It's distinct from the cars, so the solid white line, if you go over that, chief will write you a ticket. Stay in your lane. And this is an example of a sharo, where cars and bikes are sharing the same lane. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the vision. It's mainly those 4 different options, and again, just providing you alternatives to present the neighborhood, maybe to get people talking, and to open up the discussion of, we talked about in the comprehensive plan, making some improvements. Here's some of your options.
Should we stop now for questions?
Yeah, why don't we wrap this one up, and then we'll jump into Prospect.
If I could ask you, most of us know you, we know the firm, and we know your team, but tell us, for those of us who don't know, your experience, and I know you're a landscape architect, I believe.
Sure, it's a good point. Yeah, we've been here quite a bit. We know most of you. I'm Jeff Martin. I'm a landscape architect and a planner with Farnsworth Group. I've been doing this for 32 years now. So we do a lot of work with urban communities, rural communities, doing streetscapes. So we have a lot of experience with this. And to be honest with you, and we're not saying this, we love doing work in Peoria Heights. It's such a unique community, and even a street like Monroe, is a great opportunity. Just because I go back to that initial graphic showing everything this could connect to, that's what makes it exciting. So, any questions? I'd be happy to.
Really stupid question.
Sure.
Who coined the term sharoads?
Sharo.
Sharows.
It's shared use lane.
Interesting.
Some transportation engineer.
Oh my goodness.
Came up with it.
Because bikes and cars have always shared the road. So,
I know.
But now we need a term for it. But
Yeah, there is, now I've heard good and bad. There is a maintenance, the paint markings on the road, those have to be painted every now and then. You have to hang signs on the road, and there's also some debate as to whether or not they actually work. I've also heard on the flip side, yes, they do. They bring attention that bicycles, are in the area. This is a route that you want to travel on. So luckily, we're not dealing with miles and miles here, but it's a pretty small segment that if we did want to have bicycles on here, I think the Sharrow could be a good option.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
I really liked the presentation and the different ideas that your team went through. One thing that I was curious about, though, if we had, and you were messing around with, like a grass strip, a landscaping strip where we might be able to put some trees or something. Was there ever a thought to put that strip, yeah, exactly, there on the right, in the center of the road? Would that cause, I mean, just as far as the mentality of things, we have, we're taking land, and I love the thought process. We're taking land what people believe is theirs away. If we put this in the center of the road, we may avoid those sorts of problems, but I know it probably raises other issues. So based on your experience, what would that look like?
It would be expensive. I'll be honest with you. Do we have? Let's see. These are not alley-fed lots. So we have turning people. If I'm going northbound, and want to get over here, I have to.
So we're creating curbs, more and more curbs for turn in and turn out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think what you're saying is just have a long, kind of, what's the cool street right off of Knox, just west of Knoxville. It's got the big boulevard off War Memorial.
I know what you're talking about.
That's what you're saying, to do something like that.
Something similar. But if we have like turn in, wouldn't you just break it up so there are places where you could?
You could. I think we'd have a lot of turn-ins,
okay,
given the number of driveways that we have.
Okay.
If I may, the other thing, after having many discussions with this wonderful group, it's not addressing a sidewalk issue. You're creating a grassy area, which I love that idea with the trees and the boulevard effect, but you're not addressing other issues that I think that we all think are important, connectivity and that type of thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the expense of you'd have to pour a curb on each side of it, which gets expensive. Someone has to maintain that area in the middle. And again, we've only got a 60-foot wide right-of-way, so it's tough to do that in there.
You may not get parking, right? Or the boulevard wouldn't be centered and you'd have parking only on one side.
Yeah.
There are maintenance issues too. Okay? As an old public works director, you don't like those things, but I think one of the points is it's a narrow roadway, and it would restrict access to some of the driveways as well.
Okay.
But the green part, though, is that's why we're showing some options of trying to locate on this one, getting a green strip with a sidewalk on the other side of it, and if we could do trees on that side because we don't have power lines, or even on this other one where I can get a little 3-foot wide grass strip between a new sidewalk and the back of the curb. To me, I'd rather focus on that and try to achieve that and to make that a more comfortable environment for walking.
Well, I think shooting for aesthetically pleasing, if we miss out on that opportunity, that's a real shame. So yeah, I think if we can shoot for the moon, why not?
The first two options, where you don't move curb lines, that's essentially paint on the pavement and signage, as far as the costs or what those improvements involve.
On this one, on this one where we're doing bicycle lanes, yeah, we'd have paint on here, and we'd have paint and signage on this one. And there's no changes beyond the curbs on this one. And, the same on this one, that it's paint and signage. Well, but we're moving the sidewalk on the other side of the utility pole. And there could be some we don't know, we don't have a survey that shows exactly all the infrastructure that it's out there. It's a lot. That one photo I had early on, in addition to the power pole, you can see a whatever that communication box is sticking up. There's, there's all kinds of stuff that we would have to weave around. And tonight, I was even noticing tonight, the idea would work on the west side almost the entire way, but when you get to the last couple of blocks, some of those homes are pretty tight to the road. But on the east side, there's actually room over there, so it could maybe have to hopscotch across to the east side up there.
So if I may jump in here.
Sure.
A good presentation. Your work helped us adopt a comprehensive plan, which led to the board's adoption of a strategic plan. And one of those priorities, a high priority, was neighborhoods and making neighborhoods more stable and desirable to live in. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on what this plan could do, and also based on your experience in other communities doing streetscapes. What does this do for the neighborhood? Does it improve the quality of life in the neighborhood? Does it make the neighborhood more desirable to live in? Does it improve property values? You talked a lot about moving cars and bicycles, but what about consistent lighting? What does that do? Does that help reduce crime? All of these things, I think, are more important. So I really am excited about this. I want to do this because we want to get into neighborhoods and improve them and bring people back to Peoria Heights. So from a community development aspect, how does this help?
You nailed a lot of them. I mean, by making it well lit, so people feel safe walking at night. By having a safe sidewalk where, you can have a stroller and you can take your kids out and walk safely. Again, it's a quality of life issue. And you're going to see in the next presentation, it's kind of a different quality of life in a kind of a different context that we're talking about on Prospect. But these neighborhoods these are kind of the heart and soul of the community. And anything we can do to make them, safer, more livable, and better, stronger, better, pedestrian connections, bicycle connections, mass transit connections, even, on-street parking. Is there a better way to handle that and consolidate it? Incorporating landscaping. And yes, at the end of the day, it does enhance property values. I want to live in that neighborhood. It's well lit. It has safe streets. I always like to use the example of City of Chicago. If you go to the different neighborhoods in the City of Chicago, you can tell which ones have had some investments in them. They're well lit. They have nice sidewalks. People are using them. There's bicycle infrastructure. So it does, and it will enhance the neighborhood. Ideally, it enhances property values. Everyone's property values are going up now, but at some point that's going to level off. But I think we need to invest in these neighborhoods. And again, this graphic with that yellow line, I didn't count it up. It's a lot of rooftops in that area that would benefit from this connection to 3 schools. Actually, if you think about it, the public campus that's 3 schools alone, and then St. Thomas and Peoria Christian, 5 schools, that if you have a little bit more confidence to say, hey, jump on your bike and, right up to the school, use the bike lane. Or, take your sister, make sure you stay on the sidewalk, and if you knew it was a safe sidewalk, you might be more apt to do that. So.
The focus of this was really on Monroe, but talking about Chicago neighborhoods. When you had this graphic up earlier, I was thinking about, does the village call that neighborhood something? Does it have a name?
We're waiting for that to happen, but that's one of the tasks that is.
Even branding, branding that, the name of the neighborhood around the perimeter, along with a corridor improvement. I mean, that people start to identify with that, the ones that live in there, and it sort of says something about them.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the goals. We're moving in that direction, but I think the board had a vision that all of the neighborhoods in Peoria Heights would have a name and a brand, and that we might foster a little competition between those neighborhoods. But there needs to be a place to start, and I know there are other neighborhoods that would like to have this, but this is partly because of War Memorial Drive and the development there. We want to make this also more safe and try and discourage a lot of cut-through traffic if we can. So we just feel that this could be a good place to start. But the branding is coming.
And as far as discouraging cut-through traffic, would there be any traffic calming issues on or things on this street in your vision?
We didn't show any on here. I didn't want to get too aggressive. We could. You'll see when we get on Prospect, we do curb extensions, which we could easily do that when we have an intersection here. Just move the curb line out so there's no parking there, and we're kind of creating a choke point. You still have two cars that go through, but physically when you approach it, you naturally want to slow down. We could easily do that.
I'd add to that, on a residential street like this, there's certain things that are traffic calming you don't recognize them. Parking is. If we would narrow this street and add parking just on one side, that would tend to slow traffic a bit. Landscaping, if we had the opportunity to plant larger trees, things like that, that also calm traffic on a residential street.
So those traffic calming features, I think, what's next on this? I think the village needs to determine, maybe talk with the neighbors, figure out, hey, what are your thoughts on the corridor? And then take a deeper dive in this and start to get a little bit more of a detailed plan where we can start to get, look in plan view, and maybe we start to look at traffic calming features that are added to it. How does this all physically lay out? So.
Also, I know we want to move on to the next presentation and not be here too long, but if Mr. Aldrich could speak to the importance of having this plan in order to secure funds for the next step. Like, even if we hadn't decided specifically on one of these 4 iterations, we need this in order to apply for a grant.
It's very important to do some homework when you apply for grants, and like I said, just having exhibits and saying you went through a thought process already, that whoever you're applying to looks at that and say, hey, they've done some work on this. It just makes your application much better. So I think that's important, and this is the type of project we eventually will probably seek some grants for as they come up, and again, if we do eliminate curb on one side, things like that, could make it a fairly substantial project. So we'll be looking for federal or other state funds potentially to help with this.
And I think this one goes along with what you're going to see next, that if you're applying for funding for Prospect, you could put this in with it to say, we see kind of a domino effect happening here, that we have improvements happening on Prospect, but, Toledo is going to tie into the Rock Island Greenway, which connects over to Monroe Avenue. We've got consistent lighting and branding on both. I think you'd use it for not just Monroe, but for Prospect too. So.
The other thing these things do, it's we go to the public with these, as these presentations help when we talk to the public. And that's something, especially on Prospect Road, we'll probably initiate before we even, as soon as this presentation is over, we can present some of these ideas to the public and start getting folks to think in that direction.
Anything else on, the next presentation has much better fun graphics that Caitlin put together. So I'm excited to share that one. Okay.
Well, Jeff, before you close, I know Trustee Kazam and I sat through one of your presentations at the Illinois Municipal League, and I think it was Paxton, Illinois. You showed a streetscape and what you've done there. You've done some really fine work throughout the state, so.
They're building it right now. It's under
all right,
construction.
we'll have to
we'll have to take a road trip.
Phase 1.
Okay. I'm Paul Corey. I'm an architect with Farnsworth Group, and been working with the village for a few years, was involved with the comprehensive plan as well as a handful of building projects throughout the village. And I agree with Jeff's words about we really love this community. And we're not just saying that, but it's a unique community with a lot to offer, and that's pretty exciting to us. Caitlin, you want to say a few words?
Sure. I'm Caitlin Crank. I'm an architectural designer with Farnsworth Group. I work with Jeff and Paul quite often, and I've only been full-time for 3 years, so I'm getting a lot of experience from these guys.
So, and Jeff and I usually are the ones that, are sort of the face of Farnsworth with the village board here, but it's really Caitlin who's doing all the work behind the scenes, and she's probably done 90% of the work of this design and this presentation. Just like Monroe Street, Prospect Road is this vision book is a follow-up from the comprehensive plan. It's one of the major goals of the comprehensive plan to look at improvements along Prospect Road. And so this is the book itself. We're just going to try to provide some highlights as we go through it. I'll try to be conscious of your time. We get excited about this stuff, so we do like to talk about it, or at least I do. I won't speak for them. So really an overview of the study area. The red line is just indicating from Lake Avenue on the right-hand side to Kingman and Grand Avenue, or Grandview Avenue, Grandview Drive on the left-hand side. Essentially Lake to Glen, but the road narrows, one block past Glen to the two-lane road, so that's why we took it all the way to the 2 lanes. Provided some history, which I'm sure you all are aware of, looking at existing conditions and the history of the road. 100 years ago, it was a 2-lane road. It expanded. I don't know that we have an exact date. We're thinking in the 70s, maybe in the 50s. And I think part of the reason for that was all of the truck traffic at Pabst. We came in late to the truck discussion earlier, so I'm not sure what all of that was. But I think the other reason the road was expanded was because that was the idea 50, 70 years ago, was wider roads, put more cars through, that's a good thing for everybody. What we've learned over that time is it's not always the best thing for a downtown because it leads to higher speed traffic, potential conflicts with pedestrians, and a lot of the traffic, as we've heard from the village over the years, just passes through Peoria Heights. They're not, all those cars are not stopping at the businesses in Peoria Heights. 4 of the big goals presented in this vision are traffic calming. So we've already touched on some of those ideas. We'll show you some examples. Aesthetics, amenities, and wayfinding signage system. So these graphics on the top right may look similar. Those are proposed roadways, but I'll try to explain it simply. Generally speaking, north of the Rock Island Trail, you have essentially you could park 7 cars across the road. You have a turn lane in the middle, 2 lanes in each direction, and then 2 parking lanes. And we're proposing that goes down to 5. So you reduce from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. South of the trailhead, you have 5 lanes today, 2 traffic in each direction in the turn lane. In the future, we would basically replace one of those traffic lanes with on-street parking. So north of the trailhead, you have the opportunity to narrow the road and expand sidewalks. South of the trail, the right-of-way is much narrower, and so we can change some lanes to parking, but there's not a lot of room to be able to expand the sidewalks. A couple of the traffic calming ideas. So Jeff mentioned curb extensions. Sometimes we call them bump outs at the intersections. So that narrows the road. You talked about a choke point to calm traffic. It's a cue for drivers to slow down. That also shortens the distance that a pedestrian has to cross the road to get to the other side safely. The image on the right indicates a tabletop intersection, which we know are mixed reviews in the Peoria area because of the tabletop intersection at University and Main Street up by Bradley. But that is, essentially, it's a large speed hump they have on North Prospect. And where we have this proposed is at the Rock Island, at the intersection with the Rock Island Greenway. We'll show you some examples of that, or a depiction of that. Caitlin, you want to talk about some of the features on this sample block?
Sure. So this is a sample block of what would make up all of the blocks along Prospect. I'm just going to point out a couple key things. We have a couple different things dispersed in the legend. What we have is labeled F is the curb extensions. That would bookend each intersection or each block. And then there's ADA parking along the street as well as parking for everyone else. We would also be widening the sidewalks. So that would be broken down into 2 areas. The first one is a 12.5-foot wide sidewalk where shops could put their wares out on the sidewalk. People can walk without having to weave in and out of tables. And then the other part is an amenity zone. And in that zone, we would have things like trees and planters, lighting and seating. One of the points that was made during one of the stakeholder meetings was everybody likes the eclectic feel of the Heights. So while we want consistency throughout Prospect, we thought it would be a fun way for shops and restaurants to keep with the eclectic feel by providing their own tables and chairs. So it's a little bit different as you move down Prospect. Continuing on with the amenities, during the stakeholder meetings, we were showing them a number of images, and while they were looking at all of these images, they decided on 4 key ideas that they wanted to stick with when choosing the different types of amenities. They wanted these things to be simple, easy to maintain, affordable, and have a natural connection. Since Peoria Heights is located on a bluff, it's nice to bring some of that natural material to Prospect Road. And then here, we have different ways of wayfinding. So like what was shown in the previous image with the timber light post, we are wanting to provide natural and modern themed light posts, street signs. We had the idea of coming up with a barricade so that you could block off different parts of the street for events. Something that we often think of when we think of Peoria Heights is Tower Park and that bright red. So we were wanting to carry that throughout Prospect Road too, with some of the custom signs and barricades, and then also the wayfinding sign. So Paul, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
First on the road signs, we tried to do some custom road signs, but our transportation engineers told us that that was not a good idea, and that's very, very difficult to accomplish. So we had to do our creative stuff, holding out the right end of this this image with some of the trailhead signage. But even coming up with some barricades that are sort of Peoria Heights barricades that are easy to move, but that's a important part of what the Heights is trying to create, to be able to have street events and things. So we thought that was kind of a fun opportunity. The wayfinding pole, that's this one here. You'll see it in our renderings in a few minutes. But one of the ideas with that was to actually brand or burn in a QR code into the wood post so people could walk up to it and scan it and be able to, on their smart device, and be able to pull up a map of the community. And the benefit of that versus a physical map is you can be updating it. You can include all the business names if you want. You can update that as businesses switch out. Whereas if you have physical maps, you're just going to be stuck with limited information. Before I take one more step into talking about the different districts that we've identified, on the left-hand side, we took the liberty of looking at your village logo. And this is actually different than what you have today, and we've made some subtle changes to it. We can talk about those at another time and the reasons why. The big reason is sometimes you want to do just a one color logo, and your current logo doesn't really allow you to do that. So that's just kind of a basic thing from a graphic design standpoint. We're just simplifying it a bit and making the woodpecker larger.
We added the river.
And we added the river, yes. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so this image starts to identify in the blue area what we refer to as the downtown. I hear Restaurant Row sometimes, that term being used. And then the red area is the trailhead. And as we've had discussions about Peoria Heights, we've talked about having bookends, so having gateway entries into the community. But because of the irregular configuration of the community, the sort of split street on South Prospect Road, half of it's Peoria Heights, half of it's Peoria, it's kind of this question of, well, where does Peoria Heights begin? And most people probably don't know, but a lot of people know when they're in Peoria Heights, when you're in sort of in these areas. So we think those are two opportunities to create kind of identifiable districts, the trailhead and the downtown. And the wayfinding signs, may call out those things, trailhead, downtown, the bluff, Tower Park. We've struggled with the name of the district south of the trailhead on Prospect, and I think that's because there is no clear identity of what that is today. So that's another area that's looking for an identity. The trail, I think I'll mention it here, the trailhead that we have in here, you'll see some bright colors in this area. That was a design by Theodore Hare that I think he was commissioned to create for a grant application for improvements at that intersection. And we had his permission to incorporate that into our model to be able to present that to you. And then just to point out one other thing, when you have a chance, this will work much better when you have the book in front of you, but there's a little legend up here that indicates where on Prospect Road you're standing when we get into these renderings on the next pages. Is that you?
I guess.
Yeah, so Caitlin's going to walk you through the visuals. I will point out that we have a computer model of this whole area, whether it's tonight or sometime in the future, just to be able to show you that what that is. It's just a tool that we have basically for your use and looking at different parts of the community. Okay.
So this is basically just an overview. We're hovering over Kelly Avenue, and in this photo you can see the repetition of each of the street blocks, and then you can also see a little bit better the curb extensions or bump outs and how it narrows the road so it makes it a little bit safer for pedestrians to cross.
Can I point out one thing too in terms of the simplicity for maintenance? What we have through the whole corridor is a dead straight swath of asphalt, and then the parking areas are concrete, and it's a dead straight swath of concrete. The idea is that the concrete will last a long time and not get a ton of abuse in the parking areas, and it looks nicer, but when you have to repave the road, it's just a straight shot. You don't have a bunch of ins and outs and things to be able to repave the road.
This is south of the Rock Island Greenway. It's a little bit different than it is today. We're proposing that eventually, as Peoria Heights grows a little bit more, maybe your setbacks change a little bit, and new construction can be built right up against the sidewalk. So it gives more of a, I don't know, I guess like a hustle and bustle kind of feel that this north part has. You can see the sharrows again.
So this is actually your build to lines that I think you have in your overlay district. The property lines are that close. Today, most of those buildings are set quite a ways back from the road, but it's actually, if you build, if it was 2- and 3-story buildings all through there, which may not happen, but if it was, you can imagine that would actually feel pretty, almost cramped compared to what you have today.
This one is, you can kind of see the trailhead in the background and some of the street lights. We've tried to soften the sidewalk a little bit with grass. You can kind of see on the right-hand side some bollards that would also be wood, keep with the natural feel.
In both of these last two slides, we've taken some liberties on buildings, that don't exist today, and we've designed some buildings adjacent to the road just to start creating showing you what that look and feel might be.
This one is at the intersection, I think it's Marietta and Prospect. Again, showing the trailhead that was designed by Theodore Hare. This is where we had one of the traffic calming methods. It was the raised intersection with the intent of slowing cars down significantly since it's a raised intersection and there's a lot of color on the street, so it signals to vehicular traffic to slow down. You never know when a person's just kind of dart out.
And it's a bit of a challenging intersection. Wayne might be able to add to this, but because the old rail line used to cut diagonally across that intersection, so the trail's not, if you follow that line, it's not crossing right where a traffic engineer would want people to be crossing. Today, people kind of jog on the 90 degrees across it. So the raised intersection and then all of the striping, these fun, these kind of whimsical sculptures, those are all sort of cues to grab not only the driver's attention, but also pedestrians and cyclists to indicate that you're entering a zone that's different. Something's different about this, and the intention is to that it gets their attention so they start paying attention.
So this image is a better view of some of the amenities that we talked about earlier. The planters that don't have curbs, so it makes snow removal easy. Monoculture, so it's just one type of plant that's planted in these planter beds, so there's not a lot of weeding. It shows a little bit better the sidewalk and the amenity zone. Something that had also been brought up was doing different textures on the sidewalk versus the amenity zone to help signify that there's a different activity could be taking place there, whether you're sitting or walking.
It's a cost-effective way to break up just a sea of concrete, just scoring patterns and how they finish the concrete.
And then this is just an evening view of what the street could eventually look like. This image shows a little bit better the wayfinding sign. There would be one located, I think, on every block is what we had planned. And then each one of these little arrows would direct you toward the amenity or the location, the district. So this is at the curb extensions. There are a lot of shops on Prospect Road, so something that we wanted to entertain, I guess, were these little pocket parks, places where if families were out walking with their small children, they could take a break, you could charge your cell phone, you could meet up with someone. Instead of waiting in your car, you could say, hey, let's meet at this corner, and you'd have a place to sit and wait.
I think we have these at opposite corners at the intersections, and then the other two corners, if I remember, and I don't know that we have a rendering of it, but we're taking the sculptures that you have along the roadway and incorporating those in tasteful ways at these other corners, where it really highlights the sculptures as you go up Prospect Road.
And this one is in that downtown district that Paul was talking about earlier. That was outlined in blue. I think it's between Sieberling and Samuel, where you could block off the road and do different types of events. So we were playing with the idea of setting up concerts here, doing string lights across the road, making it a place where people want to stay and hang out, spend their evening.
I just want to jump in. Maybe go back one, it's a little bit easier to read during the day.
Oops.
But basically, we're taking a lane of traffic, cutting it in half, and putting it on each side of the road. So in essence, widening that sidewalk by about 5 or 6 feet on each side. So you're not seeing, like, when you drive by tonight, you see all the people sitting out. It works, what you have now in the little parklets, but those go away, and people are sitting al fresco dining, on a, sidewalk, and not out, in a parking space.
Mm-hmm.
So we, actually, get a lot of parking spaces, through here.
And then I think this one might be the last image. It just shows a little bit better what the street would look like, and kind of ties in all of that, the natural things that we were going for with the temporary lights, the wayfinding sign, planting new street trees.
Next steps, Wayne mentioned in his introduction that this is the first step of several, maybe more than several even. With this project in particular, this would be an extensive upgrade throughout, that whole length of Prospect Road. And not only would you likely be considering doing these improvements in phases for funding reasons, but also there's some sequencing. There's, when you do road construction, it's shutting down the direct access to the businesses. How do you get traffic around the road construction? And so the connection, the Kelly Avenue connection To the west is something that is probably an important consideration as part of the Prospect Road improvements. But something I think the village will need to grapple with is where is the priority? Where do you start? You know, you start south of the trailhead, you start at the trailhead, you start somewhere north of the trailhead, and it's kind of in, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of pros and cons for one area or another, but that's something I think all of you can probably start kind of pondering as you get into this. So we're through. We'll take questions. Or Wayne, if you had some closing remarks.
Yeah, the only thing, just kind of comment on what Paul said last is, as we pursue funding, federal funding, you know, this takes on a different kind of a look as well. And for the federally funded project, it will probably go from Kingman all the way down to Ward Drive. And that's because the feds like what they call logical termini. So again, some of these things can be applied in those other areas, but and it's a lot of these things will be debated again at that phase, and that's a good thing. But this really does provide a great vision, and thank you to the Farnsworth team for this. And I'm excited about taking this on the road, like you said, using some of the other visuals and really discussing things with the public and starting to get them excited about this project.
Questions or comments?
Are there, oh, sorry. Wayne, are you aware of, Paul's statement on the business disruption is something that I'm sure we would hear a little bit about. Are you aware of any grants specifically for, you know, when we engage in a project like this, that we could utilize for like business disruption, you know, so that, you know, these projects run a little long sometimes, that we can...
I can tell you some of the things we do now in the village, you know, will help, you know, just BDD grants, facade grants, those types of things, help with that process. It's hard to, you know, and there will be disruption. I'm not aware personally of grants, you know, public type of grants. There are some loan programs out there that could be very helpful as people look to renovate their businesses, things like that. So we would look at all those things, loan programs, grants for facades, physical things that might help these folks out. Been through this before. It's not easy, but it's something to look forward to. And I think really the folks do see you know, the great benefit in the future as they go through the disruption.
And like in normal, right? When you go right up to the door, when you go right up to the, you know, these places, I mean, they have to, these businesses have to shut down for a time?
We tried not to, and one way to do that is to look at the back doors, you know, so that's a way to help is there a grant to help with the back doors if that's possible. We tried very hard not to disrupt the business, which meant, you know, strange work hours, things like that, to expedite the construction right in front. And then, you know, we may have only provided a 5-foot sidewalk in front with a railing, but still we tried to maintain access at all times. All these things certainly will be discussed as we move forward with the project.
It's a great point. We did Havana Streetscape. We literally built little wood walkways.
Access points, sure.
You know, to get from when we did one side of the road, did the construction over there while the other side was untouched. When we're tearing it up, still providing access to their front door. Yes, there might be a day where we're pouring concrete right outside. We have to go in through the back, but for the most part, it's just a temporary little walkway to their door.
Right.
So it's education, and it's how you stage it. It's uncomfortable, but we do it all the time.
Okay. Thanks.
I had a question. You mentioned when presented to the feds that they would want something maybe going from Grandview Drive to Ward Drive for the Prospect situation. Yes. Now, part of that is Peoria's responsibility. So would they be involved in
Yes.
in some way
I
with
believe,
doing
I've
that?
made calls with very little response during the grant process, but yeah, that would certainly be a part of it. And I see that as a partnership. It's a good thing when you do grants and participate, so I think, they would have great benefit to this as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
If I could follow up on that, that prompted me to think of an idea I've had for a long time. If you do an inventory of the historical and green assets within a region here, and I'm thinking Tower Park, I'm thinking Grandview Drive, I'm thinking the Rock Island Trail, I'm thinking the Peoria Heights downtown. And if you think that a little further south, Glen Oak Park, Springdale Cemetery, Glen Oak Zoo, the Savannah at Springdale Cemetery, and if you haven't seen that, it's one of the most unique places in all of Illinois. These assets are all connected not only by Prospect, by the Rock Island Trail. And I often thought that how would you create some sort of a historical and tourist district and entertainment district, the partners would be, the Park District, Springdale Cemetery, the city of Peoria, Peoria Heights. Are we thinking too big, Wayne, or?
No, I think, that falls, ecotourism, but I think the important part is the trail, and if the trail system connects all these places, trails are not just recreational, they're for commuters and everything else. And then wayfinding, we discussed, just ways to connect them through a wayfinding system too, and a modern wayfinding system like a QR code. That way it can be kept fresh and up to date, things like that. So I certainly think that's something to promote these connections, especially along the trail.
So next steps were mentioned. This is I think especially Monroe Avenue is a high priority. This is a priority as well. Then we want to make sure we keep moving forward. The most important piece of that is public input, but we could land one of these grants, we may not. So does that create a sense of urgency once we get successful?
Yes. So for example, Prospect Road, if we get a big federal grant for phase one, which is what we asked for, we'd immediately start to, there'd be other teams and other discipline of professionals, landscape architects, civil engineers, and others would get involved, and that would be and public involvement would be in a big part of that. So that puts some very much priority. On Monroe, just the development that's proposed on War Memorial Drive puts some priority to that, and in particular the intersections, pedestrian access across War Drive, things like that. So we'll continue to look for grant opportunities. Right now, there's a lot of money out there. We don't know exactly how it's going to come down, but there's a lot of opportunity right now.
Well, I would say sometimes planning and studies are criticized because often they sit on a shelf, but I would give a shout out and a compliment. The comprehensive plan obviously has created a whole lot of interest on War Memorial Drive, and we're seeing a lot of development happening there. So I think it is important once you adopt those plans to continue to measure your goals and objectives and make sure you're moving in the right direction. So we're going to count on you, Mr. Aldridge, to make sure that we follow up on this. And does anyone else have any other questions or thoughts at this time? Thanks all of you for being here. We're really proud of our relationship with you and look forward to continuing that.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we would be at miscellaneous business. Any miscellaneous business come for the board? Chief, I have one thing. Again, I want to make an appeal to everyone who might be watching at home, but also in every way possible that we need firefighters, we need volunteer firefighters. If I'm watching from home, I may not know you, they may not know a lot of us. How do I get more information about volunteering?
The website, there's an application on the website to apply for the department.
Okay. And I really think that we ought to get with Mike Bailey and do everything we can to make the community aware that we need some volunteers. So can we follow up on that as well? All right. If there's no further business coming before the board, Trustee Gett?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned.